Last week, I went to the Eastern Township in the Quebec province where there used to be open pit mines for asbestos. So today I'm going to talk about chrysotile, which is the mineral that we get asbestos from. I'll talk a little bit about the fact that why it is dangerous for our health and why we no longer exploit and also export asbestos from Canada since 2012. So this is basically what we're going to talk about today. So here I have an example. So I went to a museum called Minero in that area, in the Thetford Mines area. So here I'm going to show. So here it is what we call at home a loonie. So this is a $1 coin from Canada. So this is a commemorative commemorative coin. Usually there's a loon on it that we published, and the loon is there to represent the $1. That's why we call it a loonie from the bird loon, and it's exciting. So here beside the coin, you could see here a fracture, and in the fracture you have a mineral. And as you could see, you can see the lines that are going. So you can see the lines as striation here. So what is interesting about chrysotile? Chrysotile is a fibrous, not necessarily fibrous. It is, you could say that it's a mineral that creates little needles. So what happens here is that you had at some point a fracture that started to expand. And because there was an expansion, there was a low pressure here. And what happened is that you have room for a mineral, and it just grew as the fracture increased. Now, some of you may not know. I don't know if I can do a drawing. Let's see. A few years back, I remember it was in a late fall. And what happened is at night, we ended up having frost. So what happened here is that you had the water like this, and you had the little puddle like this. And when I went to see the puddle, there were a pebble like this. And what happened here is that we had ice crystals that were like this. And the ice crystals were very fibrous, and they were holding the pebble up like this. And so here the pebble was defying gravity to go up. And you're going to say, why is that? So that was interesting. So that's why I mentioned that the chrysotile is using a fracture and low pressure area. So if you have water like this, and you have a rock, let's say that the rock that is like this. So what happened, because of capillarity, you have some water that will be going to here and going to here. But because of nucleation, you may have an ice crystal. Think of an icicle or maybe a snowflake, for example. So you have here a little crystal that happened right here. But what happened though is that because you have some crystal here, and because when water freezes, it expands, what happened here is that it moved the rock a little bit further. So like this, creating an opportunity for more ice crystals to grow here. And here, this was about 1 centimeter in height. It was kind of interesting to see how it has happened. So here you had a situation where you have water, because of expansion, lifted the rocks. So this is my theory here, and I think it's a good theory. Okay, let's get back. So here we have line in the sand that mentions that it looks like a brittle fracture. I'm going to show you some pictures from a museum I went to, and that's what happened. So basically you have an open face, and then it fills up the space. But you need to be able to have a situation where there's an expansion of the crack. So chemical growth pressure. I see the same with surface gypsification on the coast. You see gypsum is very similar. It's very, you could see the minerals are very structured, and it's exactly the same thing. Excellent analogy. I've never had a chance to actually pick up a gypsum sample. Maybe one day I'll be able to go to a gypsum mine. We never know. So this was at the beginning of the museum. Interestingly enough, I forgot the loonie or the $1 on the rock. So as I was walking along, I saw a little kid that was climbing the rock and then found the loonie, was all happy. So I made the person happy that day. So that was just outside the museum. And just to show, so that's a rock that was in the area. So we're in a situation where we are in an environment that was like from the bottom of the ocean, a new crust. And you could see how tectonics was modifying some of the layers here. So I wanted to show that to you. I think it's always interesting to see how it goes. So here at so if we look here at the museum, we had some samples. So the sample I showed you, the first one looked more or less like this one here. So here we have a fracture and we have fibers that were growing like this. If you have fractures that are come from different directions, you can see that as it expanded, we have growth of crystals of chrysotile going this way and some this way as well. And depending on the setup, some of these fractures were wider. So you can see here, and the wider the fracture, the longer these fibers could be. So here's an example of very long fibers. So here in eastern Quebec, we had those mines. It was a town that used to be called Asbestos. We also had a region called Thetford Mines, and they were high quality fibers from asbestos. I'm going to show you a sample not too long, in a few minutes, on the ones that I gathered, and also a piece of my collection that I collected in the 90s that shows the fibers that we have. So here we can see that the chrysotile crystals are elongated, and it looks like material you can actually thread together like cotton or satin or any of the fibers. And that's the beauty of what asbestos was all about. They had high quality fibers, so that means that they could take those, extract them, and they could weave these fibers. And these fibers were interesting. They had the insulating properties, and they also had they were also not affected by fire. So often we use those to weave gloves for people that would work close to very high temperature. We use fibers, the shorter ones, to insulate pipes, to make sure that the pipes were insulated, especially if you are heating water and you want the water to be able to stay warm as long as possible. So very nice. So let's see if I can show you a few samples that I saw and a few that I collected. So here, I'm going to show from here. So here you could see a seam here of chrysotile. Let's see if I can find a good light reflection. So you could see a good light reflection right here. So here you had a fracture, and along the fracture, the two pieces of rock expanded like this, giving room for the chrysotile to go along here. So that was a good example. Now, the mines closed in 2012, and the reason for that is the Canadian government decided that due to the health risks of asbestos to the people that were working in the mines, but also people in the area, that it caused cancer and it was not good for the respiratory systems, they decided to stop exploitation of those open pit mines and also stop the exportation of them. So here's another example. So this one here is altered a little bit. Let's see if I can get a good reflection. So you could see here good reflection. Let's see if I get it closer, if it works a bit nicer. Let's see, I'm going to take this away. See if the camera is cooperating. Oh, there you go. So you could see here. See if I can find the reflective face. Let's see, I can do this. So some of the reflective face are right here, you could see. So they are going along this way, like this. And I had another one that was not bad. It was this one right here. At the top here, you could see the fibers of the chrysotile right here. So these were, keeping in mind that the mines were closed, it was hard to find a good one. Now, in the 90s, I used to love mineralogy back then, and then I went for a field trip and we're able to get some samples back then. And I'm going to show you an example of a 3 centimeter long asbestos sample. So here you could see it's about 3 centimeters long. You could see the fibers. I don't know if I can, so you could see how the fibers are. Now, as you can see, so this is a column of these. And then I'm going to pull here. So I know it destroys the sample, but it's amazing to see. You could see how these fibers are undoing themselves. And these were the fibers that we used to use to create those, either those pipes, insulators, these mitts, anything to help. And this was, I remember when I was young, we used to have panels made of crisscross fibers behind wood stove to protect the structure of the building. Now, keeping in mind, so these are long fibers. From the research I've read over the years, the long fibers here were not as much of a big issue because they were long and it was easy to protect the worker with mask, for example. However, if you had situation where you had shorter, let's see, remember here, the little vein right here, or the fracture, when you have small fibers, these were much smaller going through the filtration system, and that's what was going into the lungs of the workers. And that was always an issue because you had people with the life expectancy. Often you had miners passing away in their 50s because sometimes even earlier due to their respiratory system and cancer. So that's one of the reasons why Canada decided to stop doing that. Not only for the workers here, but also if you have an industry importing Canadian asbestos, we did not want to be in a situation where we're creating a situation for them. So I have to double check to see if asbestos is used in other parts of the world right now, knowing that a lot of research has been done. So it's kind of interesting to see this. I have another picture right here. So let's see. Let's go back. So here at the museum, so we have the amphiboles that is part of a family and they're very fibrous minerals. Actylonite here, we have a crocodilite, we have amosite like this, and anthophyllite, very fibrous part. However, only the chrysotile in the serpentine group had this fine fibrous minerals that could be weaved, and that was the beautiful for that. So here they called it here, I don't know if you can see, they called it amiante blanc. Amiante is the French word for asbestos. White is blanc is white. So in some places in the area, often they called asbestos white gold because of what it was bringing economically to the area. It was hundreds of millions of dollars in the economy of those areas. So very nice. So we have line in the sand. Thank you very much. It is a nasty stuff indeed. I do agree. So I'm not worrying as much about this one because it's part of my collection, but I'm just being mindful to take care of it. Usually if it is in its little collector box, and never bring it to school because I don't want anybody to be, let's see, no health difficulties. But I think when we think of mineralogy and you talk to different people, I think it's important. So in the next few weeks, I'm going to do a video on the tectonics behind the asbestos mine. I'm going to also go to Google Earth and I'm going to show you the lineup where all these open pits were lining up. Interestingly enough, let's see if I can add to this. If we look at the chemistry, so the chemistry here is Mg3Si2O5OH4. So here they were created in an environment where there was water, first of all. Second, they are rich in magnesium because they happened in a very early earth crust, and also What's interesting is that some companies decided to say, okay, giving there's so much tailing, so much bedrock from this area, and everything had been crushed for the asbestos. Is there a way to use the technology to actually extract magnesium for the industry, the metal industry? So I know that a few companies startup happen. I know there's might be one still left, but the big issue is the energy needed to be able to extract the magnesium from the chrysotile. So maybe in the future it will be possible to extract those where environmentally speaking it's sound, energy speaking it's sound, and we'll see how it goes. So it was a week where I drove there. My plan was to go and see. Interestingly enough, in the video that I produced last Saturday, all the open pits were filled with the rainwater and the aquifer. So they were half full. When I went for the visit in the 1990s, they were empty because they were still being exploited. And the beauty with that is that they were as deep as 370 meters deep, and it was easy to see how it was. But back then, I was not as much aware of the difficulties. There was dust in the air, knowing that it was not easy, I'm sure, for people living there. On this, if you have any questions related to asbestos or any other science questions, please put the comments below. I'd be more than happy to look at them. I always respond to them, and I use your ideas for future video. On this, I'm going to put here a video on another mineral I did in the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to put under here the playlist of all the video I did on the different minerals and geology that I've done in the last few months.